All right. Thanks everyone for joining the first ever International MBA Day on GMAT Club. This is our third session, I think. I was in the previous two where we had Zoom conversations with admissions and career services from top 10 schools, where we learned a lot about what international students tend to, or have to, or should do differently while they are in the MBA program, right? For this one, I have Maria, who is my friend from Applicant Lab, knows a lot about MBA applications, have shepherded thousands of MBA applicants, including me, international students, into their choice of MBA programs. And we have Ravi and Lovely, who are both current students. Lovely, you're from Wharton, Ravi, you're from HBS. Thanks so much for joining on our first International MBA Day. I'm going to ask you to maybe do a quick intro. Maria, I'll start with you first, although I'll be shocked if people don't know you by now, but I still want to do it.
Please, no paparazzi photos. What is that, Souvik, that people don't know me by now? Of course, a lot of people don't know who I am. Hi, for most people watching who probably do not know who I am, although I appreciate the compliment, Souvik. My name is Maria Wich-Vila. I'm a 2005 graduate of Harvard Business School, and I've been giving admissions advice since I enrolled at Harvard Business School in 2003. I started off volunteering with the admissions office, and I am the founder of ApplicantLab.com, which is an online platform that amalgamates all of my 20 years of experience now into one platform. And it's a series of online exercises and videos that you can access for a lot less money than a traditional admissions consultant. So please do check it out. I have a free trial. And yeah, if you're looking for good advice or if you like the way how I present things now, please do check out Applicant Lab.
Thanks, Maria. Ravi, Lovely, go ahead.
Can go ahead.
Hi everyone. I'm Lovely. I'm also an ex-follower of Maria's Applicant Lab. Used it extensively for my MBA applications. I'm currently a second year at Wharton. Prior to Wharton, I spent 6 years in energy industry at Schlumberger and then 2 years in a healthcare startup. And this last summer, I interned at a private equity shop. So I'm originally from India. And Ravi, over to you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I, I've been a user of Applicant Lab too, and now this is becoming like an Applicant Lab advertisement full on. Uh, but yeah, I grew up in India, went to undergrad at IIT Madras, graduated in 2014, worked with an oil and gas firm for the last 7-8 years before coming to HBS. And I'm now realizing that I'm entering HBS 2 decades after Maria graduated. So that's two different perspectives right there. And happy to share a little more about my journey through the MBA applications and life now.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks so much we have so much in common. We have all used Applicant Lab for our MBA applications.
I did
Uh,
not plan this, by the way, in case anyone's like, in case there's like a conspiracy theory that's like happening right here. This was not.
Awesome. Cool. So I think one of the things that I wanted to start with is how should international MBA applicants approach their applications differently? And when I was talking to admissions, one of the things that I brought up over there was, and Ravi Lovely, I'm sure you guys would agree that for the most part, when we from India, and I think the experiences are fairly consistent across China or most of Latin America and Africa, when we did undergrad or even grad school in India, um, it's all about the test scores. I mean, sure, there's an interview component, but it's all about the test scores. You either do well or you don't, and that's about it. That's what most of the time will decide whether you have a shot or not. Whether it's a test score for that specific school, whether it's a test score from your past. A lot of that is a quantitative estimation of your accomplishments, right? American business schools end up being fairly different. So Maria, tell us a little bit more about how American or US MBA applications are different from international grad school traditional applications.
Sure. So, as you said, I think a lot of people who are from countries where the undergraduate admissions process depends upon doing well on a test score are initially kind of surprised to learn that for US business schools, and business schools in particular, the test score definitely matters, but it truly is just one component. And in fact, if you think about in a nutshell, what business schools are looking for is they're not looking to admit the best student. That is, who is going to be the best student who's going to get, straight 100% on all of the quizzes and all of the tests and all of the papers that we assign. They're not looking for who's going to be the best student at the school. They're looking for who's going to be the best alumnus or alumna 5, 10, 30 years after they graduate. And the schools now have, some of these business schools have been around for 50, 100 years. And so they have tracked alumni over the decades. And they have learned that what makes for someone to become successful in the business world or in any sort of leadership position, it could be in the nonprofit space or wherever, there are certain personality traits that matter more in terms of being able to take initiative, showing that you can handle responsibility, that you can manage other people, et cetera, et cetera. And so a business school will be more than happy to overlook a slightly lower test score if the person's leadership experiences and profile prove that they have that kind of what the schools are looking for, that potential to really, advance through the ranks and make a lot of positive change in the world. The flip side of this, however, is that if you do very, very, very well on the test, that is not at all even remotely a guarantee of getting in. In fact, sometimes people do so well on the test that they kind of rest on their laurels and they assume like, well, since I did so well, the schools are going to come to me. And in fact, that arrogance can be a little bit off-putting. And in fact, unfortunately, sometimes international applicants shoot themselves in the foot by focusing too much on the test or thinking that it matters more than it does, et cetera, et cetera. And we can talk more about specific, sub mistakes that occur as a result of that. But that's kind of my introduction on that topic.
Awesome. Lovely. I am curious and Ravi too, of course, you're in the same room. I am curious, when you were applying to business schools for the first time, what were some of the strange or shocking things that you didn't really expect?
Do you want to take it off?
No, you can take it off.
Okay. So for me, I guess the number one thing which I found different from my prior experiences was the importance of research and talking to people and networking with current students, alumni, admissions office. I was just not wired that way, right? Like what you rightly mentioned, Souvik and Maria, that we, especially in India, undergrad was all about sitting for a test, getting the score, and just applying to school. The same way, even the recruiting work like that in India, it wasn't that much networking driven. So for me, trying to apply to B schools and talking to people and really understanding from their experiences was a very new journey to start with. And so
Right.
scheduling, like emailing people from the websites that I could find on school's page or somewhere from LinkedIn, and then trying to set up time on calendar, and just going through that process was a very new kind of experience for me. And what I realized was that's how the B school environment works. Like, you don't stop doing that only for admissions. Like, even if you land here in your MBA program, you still continue doing that, like reaching out to new people, trying to set up time, trying to set up a coffee chat. And so just that's how the culture in a MBA program is. So that was something new for me. And I don't know if Ravi has anything more to add.
Yeah, I think most of this is covered. I applied 2 years, so did Lovely, and like a part of the reason was what Maria already pointed out. We thought with 750, there's no way a Harvard or a Stanford would reject me, and then we faced rejection from every college on planet Earth that we applied to.
Sorry, Ravi, I don't mean to interrupt. I have the same story.
Yeah.
The same exact story. I applied first time, I didn't get anywhere. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So, and I think it's the more I meet people and mentor them going through this journey, specifically from India and rest of Southeast Asia, I see this repeating again and again with a lot of people. And I think the undergrad experience and how we got admissions into the best colleges in these places, in particularly Southeast Asia, China, plays a big role to that. The other part, apart from what Lovely and Maria covered, was the element of self-reflection. It did not come very naturally to me. For me, if you ask me to think about the impact of the work that I had, or impact of the extracurricular things that I was a part of, everything just came down to margin improvements or additional revenues or time saving and cost saving. And maybe that was because I was an engineer by background and I was an operations manager as a professional. I did not think of my work in terms of the impact that that my business had around the wider communities in which we are operating. And that was something that took me almost a year to start thinking along those lines and understanding what energy industry was doing to communities around it. And then that really helped me frame some of my stories connected to my formative experiences, places where my mother grew up, and in some way write a better application and also get a purpose and mission in life. So and that's something that I am still, that has shaped my internship recruitment over the last summer, and hopefully will guide what I do after HBS. So the element of importance of self-reflection was something that I understood very, very late, and I think most other applicants I talk to also rarely understand how formative it can become while applying.
That's super interesting. Like, first of all, lovely, like what you mentioned, we chatted about exactly that. So the first thing is networking, is not, doesn't end when you just apply to schools. Like, you network when you're in school, and as you both will realize, like, I've been out of business school for about 4 years now. It'll continue for a while. But the thing that like really surprised me was when I was applying to schools, and I had to like think about, okay, between like Ross and Fuqua start to like blend in. They feel like, oh, they're the same school. But then when you talk to students, then you kind of realize that, oh, they're actually not the same. They're like the material differences between those two programs. But when I was reaching out to people, I was like, okay, I am reaching out. I need something. But why would anyone talk to me? It just doesn't make sense. Like, why would anyone spend their time talking to a random person applying to their school? But they do, which is, I think pretty different from how things are, where I grew up. And I think, Ravi, something that you mentioned around like reflection or understanding your impact, I actually have a follow-up question for you and maybe Maria. Like, one of the things that I struggled with, not just while applying but also in business school, is like I'm not very good at like talking myself up or talking about myself. Right now I'm very good. I've learned this over the last 5-6 years of being here.
We've noticed. No, that was a joke, Souvik.
At that time it was really difficult because I think and I talked to like my Chinese and Japanese and other Asian friends, and they face the same thing where talking about yourself doesn't come super naturally. It almost like, where is the line between bragging versus clinically stating what your accomplishments are? I wonder, Maria, if you have seen that in some of the essays that you have, where people have to write their accomplishment. What did they really do to move something from X to Y? How do you get them to talk more freely about their accomplishments?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think, first of all, there's that initial idea of like, okay, I need to be humble, but then there can sometimes be an overcorrection in the other direction where it goes beyond, like, you're either too humble or you're like, I invented the internet. And it's like, well, not, it has to be something in the middle. So I think some ways to think about it are, first of all, Ravi talked about the importance of self-reflection, and part of that is thinking about, okay, what was my specific impact in a given situation? I see a lot of issues with people saying we as a team. The client came to us and the team, we decided that we were going to launch a new feature. But I don't know, your whole team is not applying to business school, and also you're not selling me on your current employer's ability to fulfill, like, I'm not hiring someone to build a website for me. So whether or not your team is good at building a website is irrelevant to me. What I would need to know is, first of all, what was your specific impact? What did you do within that we? And then also, I think one thing to think about is this: what was the interpersonal impact? Because if you think about, again, the job that you're applying for as an MBA student is, you want to think about who you're going to be as a graduate. And so
Yeah.
it's more about thinking about, okay, like, you know what? I noticed that this person on my team was not speaking up in meetings. And the team was worse off as a result because she had really terrific ideas. And so here's what I did to try to get her to speak up more. So focusing more on that interpersonal aspect as opposed to the cold hard facts, or as opposed to I built an algorithm that used a large language model and AI. Like, that's not the job I'm hiring you for, so to speak. So I think about what was my specific impact. And I think a thought exercise that you could use is, if I had not been there, if one of my coworkers had been in charge, the same end result might have happened, right? The project might have still launched, but how would that process have been different? How might it have been suboptimal? For example, I tended to lead a lot with self-deprecating humor when I was based in Asia. So I would, and one of my colleagues who was from China and had attended like the top college in China, she had a very different leadership style. And if we probably would have had the same results if we would have been put on the same projects. But the way that we got there, the way that we influenced others was very different. And there's no right or wrong, but I think it is a matter of trying to think about, how do I lead others and how do I influence others, and focusing more on those interpersonal aspects, because no matter where you end up working, you're going to need those interpersonal aspects, just like you're going to need to network for the rest of your life, unfortunately. You are also going to need those interpersonal aspects to motivate others or to convince others, etc. So I think thinking about it from that angle, as opposed to, how big was the drill that I designed to drill for the oil.
Right. Good drilling example there, considering both Ravi and Lovely work for
Energy people. Yeah.
So cool. I want to move to a question that's I'm seeing on the chat, but I also had on my mind, and I want to draw a line and start with you, Maria, and then go to Ravi and Lovely on career switching. I think so. I switched my careers. I was an engineer, was working in energy, but then moved to like nonprofit education and things like that. But now I'm like so far away from there. I'm like hardcore tech, and I kind of had my own story of how I want to do tech. I did write about going into tech in my MBA applications. But Maria, you have given a lot of clinical advice on how to think about career pivots, especially if your career pivots are really really sharp. Going from CPG to product management or investment banking or things which are pretty non-traditional. So how would you actually ask folks to litmus test their ideas of pivots? And then Ravi Lovely, I want to talk to you on like how you actually do it when you are in school, when you're not just writing a narrative, but you're actually going through, considering both of you had career pivots. So Maria, I'll start with you on how you articulate that narrative.
Yeah, so I think my advice on how to articulate the narrative is that for the purposes of your application, I would tread lightly on articulating that narrative, because I do think that schools are also risk averse. I think that there are situations where people have had very unrealistic expectations about what a business school can and cannot achieve for them. And a business school does not want someone to graduate or be a week away from graduation and camping out at the career services office and harassing people and saying, I came here to get a job at a hedge fund and I don't have that job yet and it's all your fault. And now I'm going to go badmouth you on the GMAT club message boards and say that your school is terrible. Like, because it's so important for students to have a good experience, the schools want to make sure that they can actually deliver what it is that you're looking for. So for the purposes of your application, I actually advocate taking a more conservative approach. And if you secretly do want to go to business school to do a huge pivot, I mean, Ravi and Lovely are examples that it is possible. But for the purposes of getting in, I don't want that to be the thing where you shoot yourself in the foot. It's hard enough to get in as it is. It's hard enough to tell that narrative of your leadership and your management style as it is. Why make it any harder for yourself by then also saying, oh, and by the way, I want to run, I don't know, some sort of asset management firm in the future, even though right now I'm a Teach for India teacher, right? I think you do need to tread lightly. Well, you did not say that you wanted to do asset management, but you were a forward. You did all kinds of cool things. But you did impact. You created a lot of impact wherever you went, Souvik, and it doesn't matter where, in what contexts. But anyway, so I think for the purposes of the application, I would say maybe don't apply with that huge pivot idea. If you are going to apply with some element of a pivot, then what I would say is for your resume, and if there is an essay where you describe your career plans, focus on what are those transferable skills that you have developed that would be of interest to a future employer. So, for example, if you do want to pivot into something like investment banking, maybe you don't have experience building, discounted cash flow models in Excel, but maybe you have a lot of understanding of just doing analytics in general. So maybe that's something that you could focus on, because that's something, if I'm an investment bank, I can train you on how to build a model in Excel, but I can't train you on how to have a mathematical mind if you don't currently have that. So that's what I would say. Focus on those things that would be of interest to a future employer, even if it's not a direct one-to-one match.
Awesome. So, Ravi Lovely, what would be your advice on actually getting it done?
Yeah, so I think Maria pointed out the right part in terms of applying. I would keep the story as simple as possible. And that goes back to what Lovely was saying. When you talk to a lot of people at the schools, students, alumni, ask them what's possible, what's not possible. Try to find people who are mirror images of your professional and personal background, and see where those people have landed up as jobs and what their advice is. And like if you hear a lot of people tell you that no, don't write consulting, then like I would hear their advice and not write consulting as my immediate career goal, or whatever their advice is in terms of what's possible, what's not possible. And like I won't worry too much about what you do after you are at the school, with respect to what you have written. No schools go back and track down things like, oh, you said you want to work for Amazon and here you are applying for McKinsey. That never happens. So you shouldn't be too worried about that. In terms of the other parts of it, which is how to get things done, I think it's a factor of a lot of things. How much risk appetite you have versus what kind of things you are solving for in life. After, like, so me and my wife, both of us worked in operations and commercial strategy kind of roles before MBA, and both of us worked at a private equity shop over the summer, and that's where probably we are headed. But that's not what we wrote in our applications. I wrote investment banking, Lovely wrote consulting. So that was the linear part of the story. In terms of how we made the pivot possible, it was pretty similar to how we applied to this business school. So we again found people like us who were in energy sector, and pivoted to investing roles in private equity or public markets through the MBA program. And it's a rinse and repeat. So you talk to these people, they give you their playbook, and you try to innovate your own playbook basis that, and try to repeat it. But yeah, that's my short advice in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think Maria and Ravi covered a lot of those points already. The way to think about it is how Maria mentioned, like, think of it in two parts: what you actually write in the application, and then what you actually end up doing after coming to B school. So what you write in applications, Maria's advice is super gold. Just one more addition there are some industries which are called, enterprise recruiting, which are very structured recruiting run from the school. Consulting and investment banking fall under those categories. So if you are applying to B school, you have to justify the need for an MBA, right, in your career. You can't just be saying that, I was doing schlumberger operations before and I want to spend 2 years of my time and spend 200K and just go back and do schlumberger operations again. You need to justify the reason for your MBA, and hence your goal should be a little ambitious but within reason, right? What Maria mentions on her website, that sector, geography, and your role play around those three criteria. Change maybe two at max, not the third one. And what you actually end up doing after school. So my approach was what Ravi mentioned. It's up to you on your risk appetite. For me, I wanted to play in a ladder approach. I felt that investment banking was an industry which was very well supported recruiting wise from Wharton. So I recruited first for investment banking. My reason for doing that was I was coming from no finance background, and I needed the technical footing to at least understand what finance is about. So I did recruit for banking. And then as a step two, I continued recruiting for private equity, because in my head, I felt that that's a natural progression. I need to know banking finance first. And what Ravi mentioned, we found out people similar to our profiles, the examples are very less. So you have to be, really looking for those kind of people and trying to chart your own territory. So it goes back to playing around with your resources at hand. The resources you have are time, the network that you get from your B school, and whatever clubs that you are part of. So leverage those resources. Each school has their own strength and weakness. So try to play to your strengths. Our strength was, we knew energy, we knew operations very well. So I tried to reach out to those firms who were much more operationally focused rather than just, doing financial engineering. So I could put my best foot forward and say, yes, I can apply my strengths here. So
Right.
those are some of the advices that I could offer right now.
Awesome. No, thanks for walking us. That was super detailed and very clinical as well. So I think the stuff that you mentioned about playing to your strengths, I think we often miss that because I've seen people like you mentioned consulting, IB being enterprise recruiting where there's like a clear structure in school, but for other programs, but even like non-traditional consulting firms or tech firms, you do a lot of personal outreach on your own, right? And I think that's where being able to leverage your own strength becomes even more important because why would someone spend their time talking to you when it wasn't on their agenda, when it wasn't on their calendar? That was really awesome advice. We are pretty close to the close. So, Maria, if you had to give one last minute advice for international applicants applying in round 2, what would that be?
I don't know that the advice is any different for round 1 versus round 2 per se, but I think if you are looking to apply soon, start that networking with current students as much as you can, because as Ravi and Lovely said, they're going to be able to tell you, for example, if you come from a big feeder industry, then this is not as vital. But if you come from a slightly less common industry, you can say like, look, are other people with my background getting into your school? What are you seeing in terms of, I have a certain aspect to my profile. Are people like me getting jobs? Are they getting accepted? Are they what opportunities are open to them? Because the current students are going to be the ones who really understand exactly what's going on and what the landscape is like. And so they're going to be able to give you that insight much more so than anyone. If you were to do like a profile review with Maria, like, yeah, sure, I can do my best to weigh in on that.
Sure.
But no, a current student who's currently going there is going to say, actually, I have a classmate who is exactly like you, and even though their GMAT was only 700, they did this amazing thing, and so they got in. So you actually have a good chance. That is worth its weight in gold in terms of your ability to narrow down what's realistic and what isn't.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to have to do a very few quick housekeeping, right? So number 1, we are doing this first ever International MBA dating. Up next, we have all things about GMAT focus. So Charles is going to be there, where we're going to learn about how GMAT is going to be totally different from November. Cool. Second, we have a bunch of other sessions lined up today. We have a student panel, we have an alum panel. We also have a session with an immigration lawyer. We'll talk about H-1B and visa and all of those things. So stick around. I have heard that if you like and subscribe to this video, your chances get stronger of getting into business school. So let's test that hypothesis, see what happens. Ravi Lovely, thank you so much for coming in as well. This was awesome to meet you. I'm going to ask you to come on more YouTube videos because I feel like you guys are really strong examples of doing really cool things, very clinically, and you're also not like the type of people who become successful without even trying. We are kind of similar, so I see kinship here. So I'm going to try to get you in more of these. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank
Have
you.
a
It's
great
a pleasure. Nice meeting you, Maria, again.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, it was so great to meet you. I promise I didn't do this. I did not set this up.
See you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.